Apple's basic iPad has been updated for 2019, and while I'm still a little bit disappointed with it for a couple of reasons, it's actually still the best choice for people who need a basic but very reliable tablet. The one thing Apple always upgrades with each iPad update is the processor, so I was honestly shocked when I heard it's packing the same A10 Fusion chip from last year's iPad. But then I started to think about why Apple would do this, and it started to make more sense to me. I'll explain why in a minute. Now, if you guys saw my video titled, "Do not buy the new 10.2-inch iPad," I want to explain the two reasons why I said that. First off, the A10 chip is a lot slower than the A12 in the new iPad mini or iPad Air, so I recommended users who want a bit more power to spend the extra cash on those iPads instead. And the second reason was that the 9.7-inch iPad from 2018 was actually on sale on Amazon, brand new for only $250, which is a much better deal for basic iPad users since you get the same A10 chip. But now, that sale is gone and they're basically all sold out. So with that said, the 10.2-inch iPad for $329 is now currently the best deal for a reliable budget tablet. Unless you're okay with a much smaller screen. If you pay just $55 more, you can buy the 2019 iPad mini 5 using the link in the description, which actually has a ton of advantages over the budget iPad, like much better display quality, the much faster A12 chip, and 64GB of storage instead of only 32 on the basic iPad. The only reason I wouldn't buy the iPad mini is if either you don't want to spend the extra cash for more performance, you don't want a small display, or if you want to use a full-size keyboard with your iPad. If you haven't already seen our full comparison of the 10.2-inch iPad to the iPad mini 5, I recommend that you watch it by clicking the button at the end of this video. Now, before I talk about why Apple would keep the A10 Fusion chip for another year, let me first mention what's new or what's not with the 2019 iPad. The biggest and most obvious change is the large display, but I didn't expect the iPad itself to get so much bigger. In fact, it's the same exact size as the 2019 iPad Air. And just like the Air, the regular iPad now gets a smart connector, so it supports the same exact keyboard as the Air as well. The only problem is that it's $159 for that keyboard, and I can't imagine that most people looking for a budget iPad will be willing to spend that much more money just for a keyboard. It is currently on sale for $143 on Amazon, which is nice, but it's still really expensive. A better choice for people on a budget is this Bluetooth keyboard case for only $39. I'll drop a link to it down in the description below. Other than that, the only other differences I've noticed were a bump up to 3GB of RAM and improved speaker quality. Besides that, everything else is basically the same. The same A10 Fusion chip as I've mentioned before, the same support for the first gen Apple Pencil, the same 32 gigs of base storage, the same old Bluetooth 4.2, the same non-laminated display with a lack of contrast, gap between the display and glass, and high reflectivity. So compared to last year's iPad, there really isn't that much new this year, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Now let me explain why Apple would keep the A10 Fusion chip around for another year. The budget $329 iPad was always meant to be the budget tablet option for people who need a basic tablet for regular tasks like browsing the web, using web-based apps, watching videos on YouTube, streaming shows and movies, using the Apple Pencil for note-taking, and casually playing basic games on the App Store. And for all of those things, the A10 Fusion chip is more than powerful enough, and Apple knows that basic iPad users won't have any issues, especially since they added another gigabyte of RAM to make sure the new multitasking in iPadOS works smoothly. But for the kind of user who needs to do more serious work on their iPad, like advanced photo and video editing, or if they're planning to play the highest end games available, the $329 iPad won't cut it. And that's why they have the higher end iPads like the iPad mini and the iPad Air, which pack the A12 chip, and the iPad Pro with the A12X. And since there really isn't that big of a difference in performance between the A11 chip and the A12, there would be a really huge boost in performance if Apple packed the A11 instead of the A10 in the budget iPad. There wouldn't be much of a reason to spend more cash on the higher end iPads, and that's why Apple chose to stick with the A10 for another year, until their other iPads are upgraded to the A13 chip. There's also a downside to the 3-year-old A10 chip that most people don't think about. Starting with the A11 Bionic chip, Apple implemented the Neural Engine, which powers machine learning and augmented reality applications. That neural engine is completely missing on the A10, so if and when machine learning becomes more common, or if more augmented reality apps come to the App Store, those apps may run significantly slower on this budget iPad compared to the higher end models. So that's something to think about. I think the biggest question most people are having is how long this iPad will continue to receive software support, seeing as the A10 chip is already 3 years old at this time. In my opinion, since iPadOS is now its own separate entity, I think Apple will support the 2019 budget iPad for the next 5 years, as usual, even though there's a chance they might stop supporting the A10 packing iPhone 7 sooner than that. For example, the iPhone 6 with the A8 chip doesn't support iOS 13, while the iPad mini 4 with that same A8 chip does support the new iPadOS. So all in all, the 2019 10.2-inch iPad is still the iPad to get if you're on a budget, or if you just need a basic iPad to do regular things. It's gonna be reliable for years to come, and that's what truly matters when you're buying a tablet. And if you're struggling to choose between this iPad and some of the higher end models, check out that comparison video right there to see all the differences. And if you enjoyed this review, click that circle above to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.